Hey, Aunt Gaddy here, and I'm really excited to be sharing this lesson with you because when we talk about providing repeatable tools and systems that would have leads bashing down the door to get to you, this is the exact model that I'm talking about. Now, our business has been growing steadily over the 7 years since we started it, and thankfully by now things have been going amazingly well, the last 3 years in particular. And also by now I'm very grateful that for a number of our clients, their business is thriving too, they're getting lots of leads and they too are using this system. Now here's the interesting thing, in all the years that I've been running this business, I haven't had to make a single cold call, not one. And I attribute that to this model that I'm going to share with you now. And not only are we using the model, but once I've shown you the model, you'll probably notice that a couple of the most successful businesses, I'm talking about the most successful financially over the last 10 years, are using this exact model. So, what's the basis for it? Well, I love facilitating this lesson in large workshops where I get 150 or 200 people in a room, and I ask them to imagine, just like I'm asking you to imagine now, what would you do if you were the marketing manager or the CEO or the owner of a business? I'm talking about a large business 12 years ago where the internet wasn't big, social media hadn't been invented yet, and you got a large budget, I'm talking millions of dollars to spend to attract new leads to the business and to attract positive attention to the business. What are some of the most traditional methods that a lot of companies used to use and a lot of the large companies are still using them now? So take 20 or 30 seconds, just push pause on the video and jot down some of your answers. Okay, so now that you've got a short list of some of them, I'm going to show you some of the ones that pop up. The list of tactics could be a mile long, there are hundreds of them. Here are some of the most popular ones that turn up, and I'm going to read them to you because I never got much more than about an E for handwriting at school. First one, cold calls. I put the voodoo doll next to the cold calls because this one in particular is the one that most companies resort to in the absence of new knowledge and knowledge around new marketing techniques. But it's also one of the tactics that steadily is failing more and more and is costing more and more to deliver a result. Why? Because people are particularly busy and people are becoming better and better at screening out interruptions. So what that means is less people are willing to take cold calls, and frankly it's a very, very hard way to secure new business. By the way, if you're actually doing any of these methods, my recommendation is keep running with what you've got until you get your head around some of the new marketing tactics that I'm going to show you. So there's the cold calls, the door knocking. How often has someone come to try and sell you something at your door while you're having dinner? And advertisements, an old favourite. There's print, which refers to magazine and newspaper. Then there's radio, and of course there's television. Now the last time I asked a reputable advertising agency to quote me what would it cost to screen a 1-minute advert 30 times on primetime television, guess what they quoted me? $200,000 to produce the ad. I'm talking actors, studios, the production, the works, and then $300,000 to screen that ad 30 times. That's $10,000 a pop. I've got no idea what it costs these days because frankly it's not the most effective way for most of the businesses that we're working with to get more leads. If you've got $500,000 in your marketing budget for this year, you can test that one out. If you haven't got $500,000 in your budget, keep watching this video. Billboards, we see them all the time. They're competing for people's attention. Flyers, again, very traditional. Most of the people we ask what do you do with flyers, they say they throw them out before they even get to the front door. What do you think people would do with your flyers if they've never heard of you before and they find them in the mailbox? Outbound mail. This is addressed mail that is trying to get people to do things. Quite often they haven't asked you to send anything to them. So that and spruiking, all of these, the common theme through all of them is that you are trying to interrupt people, quite often unsuspecting people who don't really at that point want to hear from you. So they don't respond well anywhere, a 2% response rate. I'm not talking about a sales close rate. I'm talking about just a response rate. 2% to a number of these things is very high. Now, that's not really a good result, is it? And for a lot of these, it's less than 0.25%. So again, if you're doing them, stick with what you've got. But I'm going to draw a big, thick green line in the sand here. I'm going to label these as traditional methods, Now I'm going to show you here the Value Hub method of getting leads into your business. So, clean slate. The Value Hub is called the Value Hub because it's based on finding ways to add more value and to grow your community. Notice I didn't say it's founded on trying to find ways to sell more stuff to your customers. It's finding ways to add more value and actually to grow your community. Now, how does that work? Well, what I want you to do is take out a clean sheet of paper, and I actually want you to copy this model down as I draw it up for you. And as soon as we're done, I want you to write at the bottom of that sheet of paper, in fact, write on the bottom of that sheet of paper right now, I can do this. Just right there, I can do this. Because there is nobody who's watching this video right now who cannot replicate this model. It is so easy. In less than 10 minutes from now, you'll have your head around this, you'll understand how it works. From there, it's just a question of working out how to execute tactics within the model. So, let's jump in. How does the Value Hub work? Well, I want you to put yourself, I'll just put you, or I'll call it your business, YB, at the center of what I call a Value Hub. Now, what's a Value Hub? Well, most people, including you, probably have a number of customers already. So I'm going to put those customers over here. And most people are pretty good at trying to work out, okay, how do we sell goods and services and how can we sell a few more goods and services to these existing customers? But it's kind of a one-way flow of traffic. Now, these customers out here have got business problems just like you and every other business. Most of the customers out here are trying to work out how to grow their profits. Many of them are grappling with the question of how do I get more leads into my business. Quite a few will be challenged with how to attract and keep talented staff, and a lot will be pressed for time. Quite a few might have challenges around cash flow. So if I come back to the question of how to get more leads into the business, do you think if you could add some value to some of the customers here to help them get more leads, that would add immense value to their business? Sure it would, you betcha. So what if you could find ways to introduce some of these customers to each other? It's a bit like this is a ready-made marketplace and you just need to turn the key to switch it on. So how do you do that? Well, I'm going to give you a couple of examples here. What if you found ways, what if you hosted an invitation-only networking lunch in which you introduce some of these people to each other? What if you started a group on LinkedIn with some specific theme where your customers could come and meet each other? What if you started a group on Facebook? What about running an advisory forum, an education session, a debate in which you invite people who can come and learn something and get educated? Notice how every time I mention one of those tactics, it's about adding value. It's not a lazy lunch, it's not a lazy get-together, it's some kind of facilitation, offline or online. Rephrase, offline and online, where you can get people together, people can meet each other, and guess what? When people start to meet each other and they start to do deals with each other, it's immensely valuable and they attribute the value back to you. And let's say you ran one of those networking lunches, which by the way is one of the easiest tactics to execute. It is by far the least expensive because when you run it again and again, each time you run it again, the cost to you, the additional cost to you is exactly zero. Why? Because you get those people to actually pay for themselves. And as part of the tuition and the rest of the online lessons that we have, we'll actually teach you the foundations and the execution of that networking lunch by a country mile, the easiest tactic to get more leads into the business. And it's astonishing because it costs you nothing each time you do it. And no, it's not magic. We've been doing it for ages, and so do many of our clients. So imagine you invite just 8 people who you already know to one of these lunches. They turn up, you facilitate, you specifically introduce some people to each other. They do a deal or two, or they just really enjoy growing their personal network. They get value from it, and then 2.5 to 3 months later, you run another one of those sessions. You run another one of those lunches. But now, for that lunch, you invite the same 8 people, but you give those people, listen to the wording I use here, you give those people the opportunity to add value to one additional person, a client or a friend of theirs, an associate of theirs. But you describe to them who would get the best out of coming to such a lunch, and you actually describe to them your perfect lead. So you name the industry or the type of business or the type of person that you think would get a lot of value from it. And when that original 8 plus 8 more turn up, what do you call those additional 8 people who turn up? What name would we give to those additional 8 people who turn up? Yep, exactly. Those are prospects. Those are prospects. These are people that potentially you can do business with. And for the additional, you had 8 at the first one, now you've got 8 at the next one, you've got 16 turning up to this lunch. How many cold calls do you need to make to get this additional 8 to turn up? Correct. 0. Not one cold call. Because these people invite them. And I think you're starting to get the hang of it. And at the lunch, these people get to meet each other. These people get to meet some of these people. I get to meet some of these people. I'd recommend if you have people on your team, I'll refer to them as staff. You may want to invite some of the staff to attend. And they may have friends, people that they studied with, people that they went to school with, who are talented people that one day should be working for your business. So how are you going to meet those people? Well, you encourage these people to invite some of those people. I'll refer to them as P for potential staff. These are people who are not yet working for you, but should one day. And who else is in this hub, this ecosystem of yours? Who else would be involved? Think about it. Correct. Suppliers. Suppliers. And some of you may have alliance partners. I'll just put AP or joint venture partners. And for some businesses, you may even at some stage want to involve the media. Not everyone, but some people may want to involve the media. And when you run these lunches, these education sessions, these advisory forums, these debates, these online groups, these various things that you do offline and online, do you think some of the suppliers that you have would want to be there and find new customers themselves? Sure they would. So these guys get to meet some of these guys, they get to meet some of these guys meet your staff meet these guys, you meet some of these guys, they meet each other, these guys meet these guys. I think by now you're starting to get the hang of what's going on in here. And the interesting thing about this is that once you get things going, quite often you don't need to do everything. Have you noticed how in a good group in LinkedIn, quite often the founder of the group is not the one that starts all the conversations. But when an interesting conversation is sparked and lots of people start contributing and chatting with each other, well, the value ultimately comes back to the person who founded it. And when that conversation spins and the value comes back to that person, well, that person is then able to reap the value. So these people who turn up, these additional people, when you call them a week later, because by the way, as a rule, you're not allowed to sell to people at your own networking lunch. You make a point of not doing that. If you try and sell to them, they don't want to come to the next one. They see it just as a big sales platform for you. But you encourage them to be very open and potentially develop new connections and sell to each other and through each other. People love turning up at those things. Everybody wants to network and to get more leads and to get more associates and contacts they can do business with or do business through. But when you contact people a week later to chat to them and you say, hi, how you going? Remember that networking lunch you came to last week? My networking lunch? And they go, of course, I remember you. You were the host. Well, I've had a good look at your profile on LinkedIn. I've looked you up on Google. I've seen some of your videos on YouTube. And I think from what I've seen, having had a browse around your website, that I might be able to add some specific value to your business. Now, when you say that to 1 or 8 of the people here, how do you think they're going to respond? And when you say, well, could I meet you for a coffee to ask you a structured set of questions? I'm referring now to the strategic interview. By the way, that's another whole lesson that we teach you further on in the program. When you say, I'd like to ask you a structured set of questions, most people respond by saying, sure, when shall we catch up? Now, just keep in mind how many times I've mentioned it. None of that involved any cold calling. Not one. Not a single cold call. You will find that your success rate for attracting leads goes up. You will also find that your strike rate in terms of closing sales from prospects goes up. Why? Because you're not trying to invite thousands of people that are unqualified leads. You're honing in and you're growing your community of people that can benefit from you, that can benefit through being part of your hub, and that surely you will be able to do a lot of business with and a lot more business through. I'm talking now about these people and various people in the hub referring you onto other people. I'm talking here about word of mouth. One of the strongest ways to attract new leads to the business. So that's the essence of the Value Hub. Now that you've got the picture here, and hopefully you've got it down on that sheet of paper in front of you, right? Now that you've got that sheet of paper, don't forget to write at the bottom, I can do this. And also, a last question that I have for you is, which businesses do you know, which business can you name that already uses this model really well? Give you a clue, one of them started in 1999. The planet, in some ways, is being dominated by them. You got it. Google. Google started out as a search engine. Sure, let's provide a service to these guys. Okay, then they thought about what can they add next. Cool. They've added directories, auctions, maps, all kinds of things. And they have brought a whole community of people together to do stuff with each other and through each other. Now, do you think if you had more than 1 billion people turning up on your Value Hub every single day, that you could find a way to turn $1 and increase your profits? Sure you would, but here's the good news. You don't need to be like Google. By the way, the other one that I was looking for, Facebook. Facebook, all about communities, all about growing ecosystems and value hubs just like this. If I bring it back to Google, you don't need to be like Google. You don't need 1 billion people. You could have 8, you could have 16, you could grow to 20, you could stop at 30 if you like. That's probably going to be easier for you to get more leads than using some of these ways. Hope you've enjoyed the lesson. I hope it's been useful for you to see that you don't need to stick with all these traditional methods. You need to start thinking about how can I add more value and use some of the new marketing techniques. I look forward to catching you in the next lesson.